So coming up this fall in November, a race that many people in our listening area will be able to vote on is the special election for Senate District 13. That's the seat that had been held by Michelle Fischbach for many years. A Republican gave up that seat earlier. She's the lieutenant governor now. So the two gentlemen who are running for that seat are in the studio with us live right now. We have the Republican Jeff Howe, who is here, State Representative Howe. Jeff, thanks for coming in.
Oh, wouldn't miss it.
And we also have the DFLer, County Commissioner, Stearns County Commissioner Joe Perske is here as well. Joe, thank you for coming in.
Well, thank you, Jim. Yeah, it's good to be here. In fact, Jeff and I just had a little visit out in the lobby, and it was really friendly. So it's nice to see that. Hopefully, it'll be a friendly campaign throughout the season.
So this race is huge. Because it's the only Senate race happening in the state of Minnesota. It's a special election. No other races are up. There's a tie right now between Republicans and Democrats. So whoever wins this race in November, your party controls the Senate for the next 2 years. So it's a big deal. Do you guys feel the pressure? I mean, there's a lot of pressure riding on this race. Do you feel that?
There is a lot of pressure. And I think a lot of the listeners out there are actually getting hit with independent expenditures from outside groups trying to find out where everybody stands, and I think that all gets attributed back to the candidates in an error because we don't have anything to do with it. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's being said, and it's kind of a bad deal in that thing. But there is a lot of pressure, especially from the parties trying to make sure that you're doing things right. So, you know, but you know, I've run 3 of these races. This is definitely a different feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. You know, you're saying it's a way to maybe control the Senate, but I'll tell you the truth is that, you know, what the Democrats came to me, I didn't go to them, and you know what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a better look at what we're actually doing down there in the legislature, because the Democrats and Republicans seem to put those jerseys on like Vikings and Packers, and they go against each other. And my focus has always been on the people, and I'll tell you what, I have no trouble as far as voting for what's right for the people. As a commissioner and as a mayor, I've always focused on the people and on the issues rather than on the party. I never ask a person that comes to me, say, Joe, I got a problem. I never say, are you Democrat or Republican? I say, what's the problem? Let's fix it.
All right. Before we get too far down the road, you guys are both pretty familiar names in this area. I think a lot of people know who you are, but for those who don't, just introduce yourselves. Take about a minute. We'll start with you, Jeff. You're a state representative now. Talk a little bit about who you are and your background.
Well, you know, I grew up in a little town of Chicago in west central Minnesota, and I came from there and went to the Navy. Served 3 years in the Navy, went to the Iranian hostage crisis. My brother got me to come up here to go to school. I ran out of money, needed money for school, so I joined the National Guard. I just retired a year ago, basically. In fact, it'll be a year ago in a couple of weeks that I retired from the National Guard after 35 years and 2 deployments. I also served 27 years in the fire service in local communities here. I spent 16 years with the St. Cloud Fire Department, and I spent 10 years with the Wake Park Department, and then I spent 19 years on the Rockville Fire Department. Anywhere from firefighter to fire chief to fire marshal and fire service coordinator. So I wore a lot of different hats during that 27 years. So, you know, I view myself, I've served pretty much as a public servant. Now I've served 1 term. I've served 2 years as a Rockville City Council to get that flavor of really local politics and how difficult it is to balance that budget. And then I've spent, like I said, the last 6 years, 3 terms in the House of Representatives, and we've had a good team with Michelle Fischbach and Tim O'Driscoll on the B side, and myself on the A side. We kind of called ourselves Team 13, and we really worked well together, and I believe we really served the people of the district well, and I look forward to continuing that teamwork and continuing working down in the capital.
All right. And Joe Perske, obviously, you come to us from Sartell. A lot of folks know you up in that area. Talk a little bit about your background and how you got here today.
Right. I guess I'll work backwards. You know, presently I'm the county commissioner for Sartell and Way Park and St. Joe and St. Wendell Township and that local area that's just west and north of St. Cloud. Before that, I was actually mayor of Sartell, and many folks know that as well. And I served for 4 years in that capacity, and actually during some tough times when we actually had the mill come down, and that was a tragedy that we had to work the community through, and I was quite pleased that in spite of that tragedy we were able to come through okay. Prior to that time I was 6 years on the city council in Sartell as well. Actually, I grew up in the area. I grew up in Sauk Rapids for the most part of my life. I was an Eagle Scout there and was active with the church there. Then my family moved to St. Cloud. I went to Apollo High School and then on to St. John's. I've been very active as far as activities with, like I said, the church, Habitat and Humanity, Wacosa, and then also in Sartell. I was a teacher there for 26 years. I've been a teacher for 37 years. Also the varsity soccer coach, as I said, is just an opportunity to work with people. And so it's like my whole life has been about people. And it's been more about people than it's been about party or politics. And so when I take a look at the opportunity to serve here, I think, you know, we need, again, to focus on the people and not on the parties, because we take a look what's happening even today with the Supreme Court Justice hearings. You know, there's one party yelling and screaming, the other one yelling and screaming. We've got two networks that yell and scream at each other. It's us and them and we and they, and I'll tell you what, that's not the way I've ever operated. It's always about what's best for the people, and that's what I hope to bring to the legislature.
I'm really curious about why the two of you decided to get into this race. Joe, you kind of already alluded to it, the party came for you. So you're a county commissioner now. That's nonpartisan.
Correct.
Sometimes maybe you don't have to deal with party politics. Right. So why go down this road now and again get back into a partisan type of a race? Yeah,
exactly right. I'm not into partisan politics, and in fact I got other things going on in my life as well. My mom's even probably listening to the station right now. She's 98 years old on 25th Avenue. She's listened all her life, and same thing on my daughter's side. She just had triplets, and I'd rather be with those triplets and with my mom and the family instead of taking this on. But then again, I take a look. I look at the dysfunction of the legislature, and both the Democrats and the Republicans are to blame. If you take a look at what happened in this last session, they come down to the last few days, the last few hours, and they come up with a 990-page omnibus bill with all those good things, but with all those things we really don't need to have happen in the state of Minnesota. And they put it up for a vote. It passes, but then the governor vetoes it. And that's not the way the government should be operating. As a commissioner, as a mayor, my focus again is get that good stuff done. Let's go ahead. Let's pass those things. But the things we have difficulties with between each other, let's go ahead. Let's find a compromise. If we can't find a compromise, then we don't pass it. But those things that are important to the people of Minnesota, let's get those things passed and work together, not against each other. So frustrating.
All right, Jeff Howe, and for you, you're going to have to run for election either way this year, whether you ran for your current seat or this seat, because they would both have been up. But as a House representative, you're probably pretty comfortable in that position, and probably would have been the top contender in that race. So why try to switch chambers at this point in your career?
You're right. I mean, it would have been easier to stay as a House member. I would have kept my seniority. It would have been. In fact, a lot of House members asked me why I was doing this. And I tell you what, Michelle Fischbach is the one that called me into her office, told me what she was going to do, and asked me to run for her seat. And at that point, I told her, well, and we both agreed that I wasn't going to do this unless I talked to my wife, Sherry, and figured out if this was really the avenue we wanted to take. So I went home, and we had a discussion, and you know, and you're right, I'm going to have to run this time anyway. In 2 years, we're going to have to run again. And then because of redistricting, you're going to have to run again. So I get no 4-year term out of this thing. Even if I do decide to stay in the Senate, I don't get a 4-year term. So what's the motivation for doing it? And it's because I think it's very important, even though Joe doesn't think it's important for party politics. It is important, as you said earlier, because it determines who's got control. And I tell you what, I will say that my first 2 votes in the Senate, when I get elected, are going to be they're going to be both pro-life votes. One will be the majority leader, who I'll make sure is a pro-life, And the second pro-life vote I'll take is for the President of the Senate. And those two positions help determine what comes to the floor for a vote. They're very important, and if they're not pro-life, you see the difference in what comes forward. So I think it's a very important piece. To me, you know, the Republicans do well on pro-life issues and gun issues, and I believe that that's an important piece of this district, as well as clean water and all the rest of that stuff that we do. But there's different approaches, and I do believe that, you know, and I'm not a big party guy either. If you look at my record of what I've passed stuff that's been definitely controversial on the Republican side of the House, but I've known how to work across those boundaries and get stuff done and get it passed. The flame retardant ban is a perfect example of that.
Okay, we're going to take a break in about 1 minute, but real quickly, I just want to get your guys' reactions on your party's gubernatorial candidate, Joe, Tim Walz. It's somebody that you're kind of aligned with. Do you like what he stands for? Do you back him strongly?
You know, I have not been all that tuned into to the governor's race as much as I've been involved with my own race. In fact, I'm not much of a cookie cutter Democrat. In fact, just what Jeff Howe was saying about the pro-life, you know, they came to me and asked me to run. I am a pro-life candidate. Also, I'm strong on Second Amendment rights. I started hunting when my brother came home from the Vietnam War. You know, I want to protect our hunting heritage, and I look even like permit to carry. You know, there are those people who are talking about the sky is falling, that, you know, we're going to have issues with permit to carry, but that never happened. And so I just wanted you to know, I'm not the cookie cutter Democrat that some people think that I should be or think I am.
And then how about you, Jeff Johnson? Are you a supporter of him?
Oh, absolutely. I think that he'll do well. I didn't start out to be, because I have a loyalty to plenty with what he did during the deal for when he was governor. He really supported the National Guard in our deployments, and then of course I got a loyalty to Michelle Fischbach because we worked together so much in the past 6 years. But they didn't prevail in the primary, so I do align with Jeff Johnson, and I'm hopefully that we'll actually, for the first time in Minnesota's history, possibly have full control of state government.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, come back, and then we'll get into more of the issues that these two guys stand for coming up next in the second segment here on WJON.